Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. I promise you we will revisit that conversation about racial slurs and homophobic slurs in the workplace and what should be done about it. We'll get back to that in a little bit, but boy, is there a lot going on in the world of politics. We have President Trump speaking in Pittsburgh. Boy, he made some interesting comments last night. Apparently, there's a wall being built in Colorado. We'll get to that. And, of course, GOP lawmakers storming a closed-door impeachment session. It is nuts. Joining us on the line right now, what better person to break all this down for us than Amee Vanderpool, who joins us on the GCI Guys hotline. She is with the BBC, also a contributor to Playboy magazine, has her own articles that she writes on there on Shapiro. Amee, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hi, guys. How are you? I'm good.
Doing good.
Doing great.
I want to get your initial reaction to what took place yesterday and break it down for us as GOP lawmakers stormed into a closed-door impeachment session. It's my understanding that about a fourth of them were allowed to be in there, but they're bringing electronic devices in there with them. What do you make of this as Adam Schiff walked out?
Well, it was a publicity stunt, and it was done to detract from what was actually happening. You know, it's the whole reason that Trump tweeted about this being a lynching, and Lindsey Graham, perpetuated that whole concept and kept that fueled all day on the day that Bill Taylor was testifying, in hopes that his testimony would be overshadowed by sort of, the salacious, flashy object in the room. They, like you were saying, a lot of them had a right to be in the room. And, Representative Swalwell told MSNBC that after Bill Taylor had testified and read his opening statement, that many of the Republicans who were in the room and had a right to be in the room didn't ask any questions. A lot of them got up and left. And those who stayed asked questions about Benghazi and conspiracy theories regarding the 2016 election. So they weren't even on point with the questions they were asking. So essentially, they basically did it for a publicity stunt because they needed to get the attention off of what was really happening. I'm just wondering why they decided to do it on that day with Laura Cooper testifying and not on the day when Bill Taylor was testifying.
That is a very good question. And by the way, I agree with you with, this being just kind of sort of a publicity stunt. I couldn't agree with you more on that one. I want to talk a little bit about the rules of impeachment because it appears to me that it is Republicans that put this stuff into law. This is Judge Andrew Napolitano, which I think we all have a tremendous amount of respect for him because I think he speaks honest and truth on Fox News. This is Judge Andrew Napolitano on the rules of impeachment process in his own words.
As frustrating as it may be to have these hearings going on behind closed doors, the hearings over which Congressman Schiff is presiding, they are consistent with the rules.
They can make any rules they want.
Well, they can't change the rules. They follow the rules. And when were the rules written? Last? In January of 2015. And who signed them? John Boehner. And who enacted them? A Republican majority.
I mean, he's right. Right, Amee? I mean, what do you think of those comments? Because he's right.
He's absolutely right. It was done by Republicans for the Benghazi hearings, which we all know yielded nothing. And, this is kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen after we get rid of Trump and after everything kind of swings over. All of the rules they've enacted, the things like Mitch McConnell holding a seat for Merrick Garland when he shouldn't be, all of those things that they're utilizing now to their advantage, that's going to swing back in the opposite direction, and it's going to be used against them. So, it's a continued example of the hypocrisy that they enact every single day. Those are their rules, and it's what they put into place. Something that's more interesting, too, is what would they prefer we do? Would they like all of this to be public? Because I promise you, if it were public, it would be much more disastrous for Trump. And Democrats are signaling that this is all about to go public in the second week of November. Mm-hmm. So their wish is about to be granted. It's about to come out in the open, and it's going to be a lot worse for Trump when that happens.
Speaking of Donald Trump, Amee, as you know, he spoke in Pittsburgh last night. We have a couple cuts we want to play from you. Of course, he mentioned that he's building a wall in Colorado. Johnny, why don't we play cut one?
We're not building a wall in Kansas, but they get the benefit of the walls that we just mentioned.
Okay, he goes on to say this.
We're building a wall in Colorado. We're building a beautiful wall, a big one that really works, that you can't get over, you can't get under.
All right.
And we're building a wall in Texas.
You guys.
Go ahead, Amy. Respond to that.
You can't get over it. You can't get under it.
I mean, it's hundreds of miles from the border. What the hell is he talking about?
And it's obviously
I'm
2,000
an
feet high.
Arizona-raised girl. I'm an Arizona-born and raised girl, and I'm not a fan of New Mexico. So I kind of want to see him try it. I kind of want to see what that would look like. Let's just have Mexico annex New Mexico and be done with it. I mean, how ridiculous was that?
This is the
I'm
president
sorry,
of the United States. No, that's all right. It's listen, we have to laugh at some of this stuff. Sadly, it's the norm now. This is the president of the United States. Does he not know where Colorado is?
Of course he does. I mean, I don't know. I could make a lot of comments about, illegal stimulants, and that's what people do, and they're not right in the head. But, I mean, the fact that he tried to write it off on Twitter as a joke. And that really bothers me. It's like, look, everybody makes mistakes and everybody uses the wrong words. But he didn't even clue in that he had used the wrong state for a really long time. He was so into it. I think he just gets so hopped up on the racist chants that he can't focus, and he just gets so in the moment that he doesn't even know what he's saying. It's sort of like evangelical pastors that are so filled with the Spirit that they just start flopping around on the floor.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, the thing about Trump that the characteristic of his personality is it's impossible for him to speak in front of the media or get up on a stage and say, you know what, guys, I misspoke. I didn't mean to say Colorado. That was my mistake. I apologize for that. We wouldn't even be talking about it today. In fact, what I would be talking about is, hey, I would give him kudos. Kudos, Mr. President, for admitting that you made a mistake. He is perfect. He can't make mistakes. Of all the idiotic things he said, of all the lies and the mistruths and the screw-ups, he has never admitted to one of them. He is perfect, and everybody in his administration seems to say the same thing and enable him. That's the characteristic about Donald Trump that I think is the most dangerous, that he can never admit that he is wrong, Amy.
Right. Well, he's a narcissist, and narcissists can't admit when they've made a mistake. And what's interesting to me is he's not even a terribly clever narcissist. I mean, if he were somebody who was very learned and very educated and very smart and on his game, and he made several mistakes and then he couldn't admit to it, then his team would be like, all right, well, it's a little bit of work, but whatever. I mean, he's making mistakes 20, 30 times a day. It's exhausting.
If you're just joining us.
It would be more likely that he would say something incorrect than he would say something correct. So I feel sorry for all the people doing the cleanup work. No, I don't. They choose to do it. I don't feel sorry for them.
They choose to. They choose to. You're right. And I call many of them enablers. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Amee Vanderpool, contributor to the BBC, Playboy Magazine, does a great job covering all this stuff. Okay, Amee, so this is a big subject. This is a big topic. Story came out today, since it is the World Series. We have a Major League Baseball umpire that tweeted out that he's getting his AR-15 and getting prepared for a civil war if Donald Trump is impeached. Now, first of all, I do not think that is going to happen. But what do you make of people like this gentleman who tweets out that he's getting his AR-15 ready for a civil war? What do you make of that?
Well, I think he should be investigated because I think it's an actual threat. And, I mean, did you see the news today that Eminem got a call from the Secret Service after he released his rap where he kind of slammed Trump? So if those things are going to happen and those things are going to be investigated as credible threats, then this umpire needs to be investigated because what he's done is very likely illegal. It's inciting certain threats, and if it incites further violence based on the words he says, he could be culpable as well. It's dangerous rhetoric, and I just don't know why somebody in the public eye would be so careless to make a statement like that would then take away their livelihood or what they were saying. I just doesn't make sense to me. Was he so caught up in that sentiment that he thought it was okay to make a statement like that? What do you guys think?
Well, Amee, this his name is Rob Drake. Let me just give you a little bit of background here. He is a major league. He is a major league umpire. Okay, this is a guy that has a very, very high-profile job. Oh, and by the way, he works with a lot of immigrants that have come over to this country, right? There's a lot of people in Major League Baseball from other countries, okay?
Right.
This is what he said. I don't want to misquote him. So I'm going to give you the exact quote that he put on his Twitter page yesterday. This is Rob Drake, a Major League umpire. Quote, I will be buying an AR-15 tomorrow because if you impeach my president this way, capital letters, you will have another civil war, exclamation points, hashtag MAGA 2020. That's exactly what he said, Amee.
Wow. Well, that makes me think that what the GOP is spinning is working on people who just simply don't know better. And they're utilizing, that core base of gun nuts who are just so extreme in their views and their Second Amendment rights that they don't understand the difference between sensible laws and all of these slangs that keep occurring. So it seems to me, that kind of a job, you get paid really well, right?
Absolutely. Hundreds of thousands. Absolutely.
He probably makes about $160,000 a year.
More than that.
Oh, my. All right.
Yeah.
So he's got a really sweet job, and he's in a very public position. To make a statement like that, it seems to me that he was just so caught up in what he thought that he didn't care. And he's going to see the ramifications of that. But that's alarming. People are really caught up in this, and they're really passionate about it. And if you take the whole Second Amendment fervor and you add it to, Trump's being unjustly investigated, it's going to be an explosive combination. Now, clearly the majority of America doesn't feel this way. They're using their heads and they're reading the actual news. But the fact that someone like this could say that, it's a little disturbing.
Well, I got to tell you something. The executive director of Georgetown University's Institute of Politics and Public Service put out this battleground poll. And in these battleground states, Amy, this might surprise you. It certainly surprises me. 7 in 10 say that the U.S. is on the edge of a civil war. That scares me to think that people actually believe that. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, it does. And when you think about, there are a lot of underground, I don't know how underground they are, but there are a lot of right-wing groups that are majorly stockpiled in terms of weapons. Mm-hmm. The amount of weapons they have on hand is frightening. Now, are they going to be able to fight a battle with the federal government? Of course not. It's insane. So on the practical level, I don't get too terribly worried because the federal government has the upper hand in terms of weaponry. But, look at the things that have been happening since Trump took office in terms of synagogues getting shot up and shopping centers getting shot up. It's going to extend to a basic disapproval with everybody. Let's say Trump is voted out. A Democrat takes office. As bad as it is now, that tension is probably going to bubble even more. And I don't think, unless Trump goes to the clink, I don't think he's going anywhere in terms of his rhetoric. He's going to be desperate to keep the attention on him, and he'll be saying whatever he can to keep fueling all of these people. I think it'll be a peaceful transition. I think it's going to be okay. But I think we're going to continue to have issues that we do now, especially with guns.
JD, you've talked a little bit about how you feel like there could be a civil war. We've talked about this on the show before. So do you agree with us, or how do you feel about this?
Trump actually brought it up himself a couple weeks ago.
How do you feel about this? Do you think there's going to be a civil war?
I sincerely hope there isn't a civil war. But I will be honest, there are a lot of overly heavily armed extremist right-wingers in the United States. And I think and then you have Antifa on the other side of things, and they're kind of in the same category. So I believe that it's a possibility if Trump is removed from office for impeachment. I think it could happen. I sincerely hope it doesn't happen. I would probably put the odds, and I am a betting man, maybe plus 250, plus 300. But I'll tell you this, 6 months ago, it would have been 10-1.
So let me ask both of you this question, and I'll start with Amy. Why is it when Bill Clinton was impeached, and when that whole impeachment inquiry and that process was going on, how come we didn't hear civil war? How come we didn't hear Democrats saying that they're going to take out their assault weapons? But why is it that we hear Republicans now saying that they're going to bring out their AR-15s? We didn't hear that when Clinton was impeached, right, Amy?
Right. Well, this is not the strategy of Democrats. We simply don't call for, a coup in terms of, hey, we didn't get our way, let's overthrow the government. If something does happen, it's not going to last for long. Let's be honest. The National Guard's going to come in and handle everything, and the federal government can outweapon anyone else that's out there. So it's going to be quick, and it's going to be dirty, and it's not going to last long. It's going to be essentially a riot. I don't think that they could get to the level of an actual war. I don't think they could sustain anything. It just doesn't happen because the Democrats didn't react in that way. We kind of sat back. We knew it was bull. We knew it was crazy and why they were doing it. And we just didn't, do the whole rally cry of, hey, we're going to take out our weapons. I don't know if that's because we were more educated or because we're just not as crazy. But, this arm of the Republican Party has become so crazy and so tyrannical that anything is possible.
And with Clinton, this was 1994, 1995. There wasn't Twitter. He didn't have the ability to, everything he said wasn't in 50 million people's faces, and the country wasn't as polarized back then. So he didn't have 4 or 5 major outlets consistently going after him, and then him responding in kind and people watching that and following him. That wasn't the case, 20, 25 years ago, Brian.
Right. It was 97, 98, and it was a completely different world. I mean, but the reality is that I call it like the Nixon shame. The reality of people in their party to recognize that someone within their party has done something wrong and condemn them while still going, hey, this isn't okay, and we're going to step up to it, that's totally different now in the age of Trump. I mean, there's nothing that Trump could do where people in his party would go, okay, he just went too far. His 40% is solid, and they're going to back him no matter what he does or what he says. Mm-hmm. So that has shifted. That the Republican Party being taken hostage by kind of the super right-wing Tea Party aspect of it has shifted, and the news cycle and social media has shifted, and the way we hear news has shifted. It's like the perfect storm when Trump came along, just sort of creating, I don't know, he was just perfectly fit for that moment.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we talk a little bit about Donald Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani? As we know, his former attorney, Michael Cohen, is now behind bars in federal prison. Now, Rudy Giuliani is under an official criminal investigation. And if you notice, in the last week, he hasn't made any of those TV appearances. Why do you think that is? Do you think there is a chance, because that Rudy Giuliani could spend some time behind bars? Where do you see this thing going?
Well, he's also lawyer shopping. Did you see that? So
I did. Yeah, I did see that.
For a defense attorney. And I'm thinking, the things you do before you go on cable news and say all of these things. But so either he had somebody who bailed on him, or he's realized finally that he's in a pickle. I don't know. I think that the probability that he could have charges levied against him is really strong. I think there's a possibility he did some foreign lobbying in an inappropriate way. He's clearly interfering in foreign relations without being a technical member of Trump's administration. It's nuts. And I think that there are a lot of things that they can go after once it all comes out. And I also think, knowing Trump and knowing how he tends to throw people under the bus, that Rudy is definitely next. Mulvaney is next. He's going to be the next one thrown under the bus, and then it's going to be Rudy when these hearings go public and they need to blame someone. So he's in trouble. He's in big trouble.
So about 98% of our communication about Donald Trump has been negative. Do you have one thing that you like about Trump, or that Trump has done since he became president of the United States, Amy?
No, not one thing.
There you go.
And I'm a very optimistic person. I'm a glass half full girl. And there's not one thing that I can think of that I'd be willing to say is a positive.
All right, Amy, you're not going to like what I have to say here. Okay, you're going to think you're probably going to think I'm a horrible person for saying this, but I'm always honest on and off the air. If Donald Trump runs against, let's just say Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden, I'm not a supporter of Joe Biden. I'm not a supporter of Elizabeth Warren. There are people on that stage that I would vote for, but it wouldn't be those two. I'm not necessarily saying I would vote for Donald Trump, but I wouldn't rule it out. Now, I think he's a horrible human being. I've been very clear on the air. I am not a Donald Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. However, I would vote for him selfishly because I think he's good for our radio show. I really personally do. And a lot of people would think that is a horrible reason to vote for somebody. I'm not saying I would vote for him, but if I did, that would be the only reason, because while I don't think being the president of the United States is an excuse to, feel like you're in a reality show or be entertaining. It's not the president's job to be entertaining. I will say this, Donald Trump is an entertaining individual. He has gotten a lot of people involved with politics, maybe for the wrong reasons, but a lot of people are now more involved in these types of discussions and in politics than ever before. So I will give him credit for that, even though it might not be a positive thing. I will say that about Trump. He's, I think Joe Biden would be probably better for the country. Maybe Elizabeth Warren would probably be better for the country from a policy standpoint. But I find them to be both dull and boring. So am I a bad person in feeling that way?
Yes.
Well, at least you're honest.
Okay,
I totally appreciate that answer.
Let me explain to you why you're mistaken in what you plan to do. I respect and understand what you're saying. I have the career I have now because of Donald Trump. I mean, I could have said, well, I've been able to start writing and get my voice out there because of Trump, and that would have never happened if things were status quo under Hillary, and we wouldn't have pushed the dial on women's rights and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is we've pushed them so far in the wrong way, and it's going to be so hard to correct it, that there are some real dangers. Now, you should be concerned about people who aren't white privileged men. You should be concerned about women and their rights that are being hammered left and right. You should be concerned about minorities. But if you need an argument about why you should be worried for yourself, then all I'm going to tell you is if you vote for Donald Trump and if he's reelected, you're going to lose pre-existing condition protections, which means your health insurance is going to skyrocket and you could go bankrupt. If you have any medical problems, you're not going to be covered. God only knows what's going to happen with the ACA because they've got court cases right now in the appeals courts that are trying to tear it apart from the inside out. So right now, I'm sure as much as you're paying through your corporate entity to have the health insurance you have, that could go absolutely haywire. It could become a state where people are paying thousands and thousands and thousands just for general insurance, and nothing is going to be controlled.
All right. Well, perhaps I need to reevaluate my position, Amee. That's fair.
Yeah.
JD, you had a question for Amee. Go ahead, JD.
I just wanted to, Brian, you're totally right. Trump gives us 40% of our content every single day. He basically acts as a second producer for us. Do you think the interest in politics would drop tremendously amongst Americans if Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden were president of the United States?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that's what I get worried about all the time, because once somebody responsible kind of takes over the ship, people are going to tune back out because it's not their natural stance to be interested in politics.
Yeah.
They've woken up and they realize, oh, God, it's really bad and we need to be awake, but they don't like to do it. But see, I've already figured out a way to, ride that tide through the whole situation if Trump goes away, because it doesn't help me either. But what does help me is the people who do want to tune out after this is all over, they know it's dangerous to do that. So what we got to do, you and me, is we got to let them know, hey, we're on watch now. We're going to watch out. If somebody that's okay, like if a Democrat takes over, we're still going to be on watch every day. We're still going to be doing this, and we'll sound the alarms if it all goes haywire again so that you guys can all go to sleep. We'll handle it. We got this. Don't worry. That's what we need to be selling, see?
All right, Amee, I got about a minute to go here. Always appreciate your insight and you coming on the show. Why don't you plug the stuff you got going on with your Shapiro articles and, of course, anything else and how people can follow you?
Sure. People should check out shiro.substack.com and sign up for a subscription to my newsletter, because I break down all of the things that are happening with the impeachment inquiry from a practical standpoint, like the who, what, when, where, but I also break down the legal aspects and what we can expect moving forward. So you need to see that and know that, and I do it in easy, digestible ways that's fun to read so that it's not boring and awful. You can also check me out on Twitter, @GirlsReallyRule is my handle, and come over and say hello.
Amee, always appreciate it when you take some time to join us. We'll catch up with you next week, okay?
Super fun. Talk to you guys soon.
All right.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Amee.
Thanks much. Amee Vanderpool, contributor to the BBC and Playboy Magazine, and her Shapiro articles. That is Shero, by the way. Coming up next, John Schaefer with the news in our Dirty Dining segment with Darcy Spears with ABC 13 locally. Take a quick break. Be back right after this.